Hello and welcome to the Sunday Surefire podcast. I'm your host, Pat Martin. Today, I'm going to be telling you where ADP has it dead wrong in 2026. To follow along, check out Fantasy Pro's half point PPR, ADP. And with that, we'll just get started here right away with Chris Olave, currently 29 overall, good for WR11 coming off the board. And look, he was a feel good story 2025. Totally get that. Finishes a top six scoring wide receiver. Played in 16 games a year ago, which was great because everyone was worried about his health, mainly those concussion issues that kept popping up for him. Just got a big extension as well. All good things. But he makes this list for me because the Saints added a ton of pass catching weapons to this roster in the offseason. They draft Jordan Tyson in round one. They grab Oscar Delp, a tight end, in round three. They select Bryce Lance, a wide receiver, in round four. As we know, Travis Etienne joins his team in free agency. He has a passing down skill set, and the team retained Jawan Johnson as well, who they've used over the last couple seasons. I don't think any one of these players necessarily represent some massive obstacle in Olave's path to production this season, but I think it's a situation where we look at the totality of all these new pieces coming together and chipping away enough at Olave's target volume, where he's not going to see as much as he did a year ago, where he was the sixth highest targeted receiver in 2025, and I think that's going to hurt his finish this coming season. And I just think I'm just not comfortable having him as a WR1 going into this year. A player that I think ADP is a little bit too low on the other hand is Terry McLaurin. It's currently 55 overall, good for WR24. And look, 2025, complete disaster for the Commanders as a whole. That included injuries to Jane Daniels as well as Terry McLaurin. But despite playing through injury, McLaurin still did finish as PFF sixth graded wide receiver, indicating that he still has plenty of juice left in his body, despite now being on the wrong side of 30 years old. Both he and Daniels are healthy in training camp, and the last time we sort of had this combination of Daniels and McLaurin being healthy, minimal competition for targets on this Commanders roster was 2024, where McLaurin exploded, finished WR6 on the season, and we were talking about him finally unlocking all that upside that we thought that he had in him, but he was being held back by lesser quarterback play. I think both players are going to get back to where they were a couple seasons ago, and if ADP holds, I'm going to have plenty of shares of McLaurin at cost. Pivoting now to the running back position. This was a really tough one for me because I'm a big fan of Jeremiah Love's game, but he's currently going ADP on Fantasy Pros, 25 overall. That's RB13 off the board. He was a really fun player to scout in Dynasty and all that. That's great. I have shares as well. I do think he's going to be a productive NFL player, and he'll have some good moments this year. But I look at James Conner, Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, all still hanging around there. Love is currently getting the majority of his reps with the second string. I know he's going to get plenty of run with the starters during the season. You don't select a running back in the top five to keep him on the bench for the majority of the season, or just use him to spell these older veterans. But going at the 2-3 turn, I think it's just too pricey for me and for a guy who's in a crowded backfield. And let's be honest, he's attached to a team who's going to be playing from behind most weeks this season. So they can say all they want that they're going to run the ball and do this and that. When you're down 10 to 14 points in the second quarter, well, that's going to go out the window. And you could argue that does leave room for him to catch passes, which is a skill set he showed some in college. But I just think that the price point here you're paying to get him on your team is a little bit too much in redraft formats. Going now to David Montgomery, he's currently 51 overall, good for for RB 23. And if you like double-digit upside when it comes to touchdowns, Montgomery's for you this year. There's very little in the way of competition for touches in this backfield, especially when it comes to the early down work and the red zone work, which are areas where Montgomery excels. The Texans defense, as we know, is an elite unit who's going to keep this team in positive or worst case neutral game scripts in most games this upcoming season. All that plays right into David Montgomery's hands, and I want as many shares as I can get if he's still going to be going in round 5 a month from now. I think there's a real chance we look back and say he's a slightly more expensive version of what Javonte Williams was for the Cowboys a season ago, where he's a guy that you draft to be your second or maybe your third running back, and he just pays off big time, and he's scoring plenty of touchdowns. Getting into the sponsor for today's show, it's brought to you by Underdog Energy Drinks. Whether you're having a marathon of a work week, you're prepping for a late night going out, or maybe you're just needing a zero sugar pick-me-up in the middle of the day, Underdog Energy Drinks is made for all those occasions, and they can be found at most major retailers throughout the Northeast, but the best place to grab a case is online at drinkunderdog.com. Make sure to use the promo code #DrinkUnderdog for 20% off your order. And just can't go wrong with Underdog. It's a great product. They taste delicious, zero sugar, all good things, folks. All right, back to the action now for the tight end position. Let's go Harold Fannin. Currently 65 overall, good for a tight end 5. He's been one of my biggest fades across all formats this offseason. If you've listened to the show in the past, you probably heard me talk about it, but here's more of the same. Look, he did show he could play as a rookie. He's a good player. I like him, but a lot of his production was predicated on volume a year ago. He was sixth among tight ends in targets. He led the Browns as a team in targets, but a lot has changed since then. The Browns are welcoming a new coaching staff to town, and we're not sure exactly what their offensive approach is going to be. The team also had an abysmal wide receiver room in 2025, and they addressed that need big time in the draft, selecting Casey Concepcion in the first round and Denzel Boston in the second round. Both players were top 40 picks in the draft. And on top of that, the quarterback position remains a massive question mark for Cleveland. There's just too many question marks for me to feel confident using my 6th-round pick on Fannin, especially when there's a couple other players at the position, and guys like Sam Laporta and Kyle Pitts, that I feel are better picks at their current ADP. Another tight end that I feel good about this upcoming season is Isaiah Likely, who's number 100 on the nose, tight end 11 off the board. And he's been one of my favorite targets this offseason if I miss out on one of the elite players earlier in drafts. John Harbaugh made it a point to bring Likely with him when he left from Baltimore to take the Giants head coaching job this offseason. And that has me excited about his fantasy upside because, as we know, Likely was playing in the shadow of Mark Andrews over the last 4 seasons, and Andrews has been one of the best fantasy tight ends of his generation, finishing no lower than tight end 8 on a points per game basis in every season between 2019 and 2024, even peaking as tight end 1 overall in 2021, which is no small feat considering the absolute run that Travis Kelce has been on from a fantasy standpoint. And a lot of that production that we saw from Andrews is now likely coming Blakely's way now that he's in the Giants. And we know that he could be productive under Coach Harbaugh because we did see him play 9 games in Andrews' absence over in their 4 years together. In those contests, he reported 10.8 half PPR points. And for reference, that mark would have been good for a tight end 5 on a per game basis last season. If Likely can tap into even something resembling that type of production going into 2026, he's going to absolutely smash this ADP, and he'll be going much earlier in drafts in 2027. Now, this one, I'm going to go to Baker Mayfield here, hitting the quarterback position. 131 overall, QB 20. And I don't know about you, but I am here for scorched earth Baker in 2026. He's openly talking about how he feels disrespected during contract negotiations. The team came out and said they didn't appreciate those comments, but hello, do you have any idea who your quarterback is? This Baker runs hot, and that's when he's at his best, when he's in this type of situation. So if you look at the team as a whole, they dealt with a ton of injuries in 2025, which really derailed them. Baker was also banged up during that stretch, but his outlook is trending in the right direction going into 2026. I know Mike Evans is gone, but Emeka Egbuka is expected to take a step forward now that he's fully healthy, coming back from a midseason hamstring injury that he actually played through, but did hamper him. Chris Godwin's been banged up the last couple of years, but he's back healthy. Jalen McMillan's there. They added Ted Hurst in the draft too. There's plenty of weapons on this roster for Baker to throw the ball to. And if we look back at Baker last season, where we were just 12 months ago, he was the guy we were drafting as a mid-range quarterback 1, and it has now slipped all the way to QB 20 in ADP. And I think it's just a blatant overcorrection in the market, and that I want to exploit that in leagues where I decide not to take a quarterback in the early going. If I want to wait out at the position, then I'm happy to grab Baker at QB 20. This next one here is a tough fade for me because I do obviously really like Joe Burrow's game. I think most football fans do as well. But he's currently going 50 overall, good for QB4 off the board. And for some of the guys I've touched on to this point, I really don't understand why their ADP is what it is at the moment. But this is not one of those cases because I do see the upside for Burrow, and he has produced in the past, and he has plenty of weapons to continue to do so this season and beyond. But I just, I see the reasons for him. I really do, but I just think QB4 is ranking him at his absolute ceiling, if for no other reason than the best season of his career is QB4 overall. And a big factor in that, in me putting him, thinking that's his ceiling, is his lack of rushing upside. He has just 2 rushing touchdowns in his last 36 regular season games, and he's currently the only quarterback ranked in the top 10 who's never rushed for 300 or more yards in a season. What that means is he has to score his fantasy points with high passing volume and passing touchdowns. Again, he's capable of doing that. His defense is bad enough to give up points and force Burrow and the team into shootouts. So I do want to share. I want shares of Burrow, but it's just too expensive for me to hit the button on him at the round 4 or 5 turn for a guy who's going to have to throw for 40-something touchdowns to pay off at that ADP. Well, it's possible. It's a tight needle to thread considering some of his injury history in the past when he's had to chase games and leaves himself exposed to injury. So good player. I just don't want to feel super confident, especially this season where the quarterback position feels deeper than it's been in recent seasons. And that's what we have for you, folks. That's where ADP has it wrong thus far in 2026. Feel free to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you're not missing any of our contents. Make sure you grab your share of energy drinks through Underdog as well. And until next time, folks, peace.